Okay, y'all, I got another video. The alternate storylines again. This time, Vegeta's the main character, right? So, Vegeta being the main character, we start out. Planet Sadala is taken over by Vegeta, and then he renames the planet Vegeta because it's King Vegeta, and then his son Vegeta, who we know as the main character, right, is growing up in his father under his father's rule, and he's saying conquering planets. But as they start to conquer planets and shit, Frieza lifts his eyebrows and goes over there. King Cold's like, my son's gonna take over you animals. Now you have to submit yourselves to him and whatever he says. Frieza showcases his abilities, and they're like, okay, well, basically we can't fight against Frieza. King Vegeta still had to, he was trying to figure something out for Frieza because he wanted to, the Saiyan race to be their own thing. They like to conquer planets, but then these, people come out of nowhere and they're trying to conquer us, and then have us do their dirty work. And he's like, we're trying to figure this shit out. Then Beerus shows up. And Vegeta sees all this. He tells his son, King Vegeta says, don't worry about it. Just go conquer another planet for me, and do right by your Saiyan blood. And Vegeta does that. Then that day, Bardock finds, Frieza, King Vegeta actually tries to mount an attack before Bardock does that. He tries to fight Frieza, but Frieza knocks his ass out. Then, the planet's destroyed. Vegeta never reports back to Frieza, though. So over the years, they continue to, conquer planets and shit and say, hey, we're the Saiyans. If Frieza comes by, you gotta let us fucking know because we don't like Frieza. You submit to us, not Frieza. He already had an idea that, Frieza had done that. He wasn't working for Frieza in this storyline, right? But he also wasn't going after Goku yet. This happened later, as they, continue to live their lives and conquer planets on the side. And Frieza knew about him, and, Frieza sent men, but guess what? All those three Saiyans, Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta, were able to defeat those foes. And Frieza was sending scrubs. He was like, oh, you can handle those. There's just three Saiyans. But then as, time goes on, these guys are getting beat, all these Frieza Force members. And he's like, oh, shit, I gotta send somebody who's, actually like that. I'll send Dodoria. Dodoria gets sent, and then Vegeta defeats Dodoria. Frieza then realizes that Vegeta's the actual problem. But Vegeta also realizes that he needs more manpower. Raditz is like, hey, I remember my brother, on Earth. Send me to go grab him for us. And he's like, okay, go fetch your brother. Goes to Earth, fights against Goku and, Piccolo. Loses to them, Raditz does, and then Vegeta gets word of the Dragon Balls. He's like, oh shit, with these, we don't even need Kakarot. We could just, wish ourselves to be immortal and we can go against Frieza ourselves. They go to Earth. Then Goku comes back to life. During the, Z Fighters and all that, Yamcha gets taken care of. Tien gets wiped out, right? Piccolo gets defeated. Gohan's actually trying to put, work on Nappa, and he's, making him sweat a little bit, but then, Nappa just gives him the elbow to the face, and then he's like, out. And before he could get killed, Goku steps forward and beats Nappa's ass, and he actually, hits him with a Kamehameha, Kaioken Kamehameha, Kaioken times 1 Kamehameha, and it's enough to, get him the fuck out of there. Vegeta just gets rid of the corpse. He's like, oh my god, this guy, really fucked up. Boom, cremated him, and then it was like, okay, let's go fight over here. He's like, he's nothing compared to me. Don't get the wrong idea. In this story, Goku can only go to Kaioken times 3, and he's not the MC anymore. So they're fighting. And Vegeta's like, okay, this Saiyan's actually, better than any Saiyan I've, trained with in the past. Better than his brother and better than Nappa. He's basically gonna be my right hand man after I beat his ass. And he's like, okay. They clash, but they, instead of it being a vertical fight with the energy blast of the Kamehameha and the Gallic Gun, it's a horizontal clash. So then, the world's not in danger because Vegeta's like, I'll need to like subjugate this planet and then have it under my kingdom. I'm gonna bring back the Saiyan race, and you're gonna be my right hand man after I defeat you. Goku gets defeated, but then Krillin and you know Gohan show up because Vegeta's like, I have to like, get the point across because Goku's still trying to fight because it's Goku, right? And he's like, oh no, 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 I have to get the point across that you are not, and once I get the Dragon Balls, I'll heal you, but you're gonna get your ass whooped first. Then they cut off his tail and all that, and then Vegeta gets away. He goes to one of those planets that he had conquered before. They have recoup chambers and shit. They said that Frieza was on their way, and they actually came through when he was away, and he's like, oh shit, Frieza? And Frieza's on Namek right now. So he gets in his ship and goes to Namek. Krillin, Gohan, and Goku are all on the same ship. They get there, right? Frieza's already collected 5 Dragon Balls. Vegeta gets there and steals the 5th Dragon Ball they had. Zarbon's in hot pursuit. He fights Zarbon and kills Zarbon, but he, hides that Dragon Ball. They get to the planet. Goku senses Vegeta, and then he senses Frieza, and he's like, yeah, Frieza's the real fucking problem here. I don't even know if Vegeta can beat Frieza. And Vegeta's like, I remember the legend that my father always taught me about the legendary Super Saiyan. That has to lie within me. I'm the prince of all Saiyans. And I sense, Kakarot's here with his, brat and that bald-headed, human. I might need to use them to my advantage. So then the Ginyu Force gets dispatched. Guru gives the Dragon Ball to Gohan since he's, pure-hearted, half-breed, right? He can trust Gohan with it and other things. Dende seems to like him, so he's like, my son Dende says you're cool, so keep the Dragon Balls and keep him next to you too, so you can activate the Dragon Balls and make the wishes when you need to. Vegeta catches him, and then he's like, oh shit, let's take these 3 Dragon Balls and keep them the fuck away from the Ginyu Force. The Ginyu Force arrive, and Goku is there already, right? So they all fight. Guldo's fought by, Krillin and Gohan, but then Goku has to step in and stop that. Goku defeats Raccoon, but it's like a hard fought battle. Like he's, it's high diff, right? Vegeta beats Jace and Burger, by himself. And then he goes after Ginyu. And Ginyu's like, you can't beat me. You know I surpassed them by a lot. And he's like, oh, well, your whole gang has been defeated by, some lowly Saiyans, as you call us. What the fuck are you gonna do now? And he's like, okay, he fights against Vegeta, and Vegeta shows that he's like, growing and growing. He's like, this guy might actually be a Super Saiyan, so let me change bodies real quick. And Vegeta was reaching those like, levels of power and shit in that moment, but he was stopped because of the body transfer. But when the body transfer happened, Ginyu don't know how to use Vegeta's body. He's fighting against Goku, and Goku's like kind of fatigued from his fights with Raccoon, but he's still, doing well. He's like, I'm gonna take this Saiyan's body after, Goku and Gohan and Krillin, help team up against Vegeta, or Vegeta Ginyu, and then Vegeta Ginyu switches bodies back with Vegeta, and then Vegeta or Goku kills Ginyu, gets him the fuck out of there. He's in the recoup tank, and in the recoup tank, he's like remembers his father and the Saiyan pride, and he's like, this is what it means to be a Saiyan. I need to beat Frieza today, and then I need to bring back the Saiyans. I don't want to kill Kakarot because he's good, punching bag for me. He's a good guy to spar against, and he's actually, he presents somewhat of a challenge to me, but I don't think he can handle Frieza. They have to leave those wishes for me. Didn't happen. They wished for, Piccolo to come to the planet, wish Piccolo back to life, and then wish Piccolo to the planet. The Dragon Balls went, void because guess what? Guru still died. Then, once shit popped off, Goku was fighting against Frieza. Then Gohan fought against Frieza when he transformed the first time. After, Krillin got hurt, and then, Piccolo tries to fight and he's doing his thing, and then, the third form comes and it's ugly and shit, but he's like beating everybody's ass, and then Goku's like still there. He's like, he's in Kaioken times 20 now. He's like, I won't let you kill my son or anybody here. And he's like, Vegeta needs to hurry up and get here. I don't know what this Super Saiyan crap is, but he better be that. And he's like, he's fighting against Frieza in his final form, and Frieza's only using about 40% power, and Goku's on the losing end this time. Vegeta gets there too late, and Goku dies. He hits him with like a couple death beams to the chest, and he's like, "Gah." And then Vegeta's like, Kakarot, don't worry, I got this. And then like the sky goes black and shit, and Frieza's like, what? And he's like, today's your day to meet your maker, Frieza. And he goes into Super Saiyan right then and there. And then the battle turns into their favor, the good guy's favor, right? So then Vegeta starts beating Frieza down. Frieza has no chance. Even when he gets jacked, he's like, I'll destroy this planet, damn it. And he goes all the way up and he, sends a, death ball down. And then Vegeta just stands there and shit. And he grabs it and throws it back up to Frieza. Frieza doesn't dodge it. He tries to, stop it. And then, Vegeta just pushes it up. And then Frieza's, gone. But the planet's still blowing up. So go on and them get out of there. Let's say this, though. Goku and Vegeta stayed, because Goku got wished back to life by the Earth's Dragon boss. And he was still on Namek with Vegeta. They were not present when Frieza came back a year later on Earth. And Gohan's like, damn, I have to do something. And Piccolo's like, wait, don't fucking move. There's somebody over there. And that's Piccolo, or that's Vegeta's son Trunks, right? He's like, Frieza, you're gonna lose again to another Super Saiyan. And then Frieza's like, you're not a Super Saiyan. Trunks deals with them the same way he did in the original timeline, the exact same way. Goku and Vegeta show up, and they both have the ability. And Goku can now go Super Saiyan as well. And it's like, took you long enough to fucking achieve this. And then he's like, well, I can, use instant transmission better than you can, Vegeta. And he's like, okay, whatever. And he showcases that to the people. And then Vegeta's like, but I can still go. Like, basically, Vegeta can still use instant transmission, but Goku can go further. Like, he can operate at a further range than Vegeta can. Vegeta can only go so far with his. As long as he's not too far away, he can still... so in a battle, he can still use instant transmission and be all right? But if he has to go to like another planet and shit, it's kind of hard. But Goku can actually pull that off. But he's still not as good as using Super Saiyan though. So then Trunks talks to Goku and tells him everything, and then Goku's like, okay, 3 years to train. And then he's like, my son should try to attain Super Saiyan 2. And then Vegeta's like, oh, whatever, it might not happen. And it's actually Goku or Vegeta that gets sick this time. Vegeta gets sick. Goku steps in and defeats Android 19 and 20. 20, or Dr. Dro runs back to the lab, awakens the androids. They put Dr. Dro in the cryostasis fate, froze his body and kept him in, suspended animation, right? And, then it got blown up by Trunks, because Trunks was like, I have to defeat these guys. Trunks fought against Android 18. Goku fought against Android 17. They got beat. Now that happened, they were like, we're just going to do what we want on this planet because Goku's not even worth our time. But we'll come back, We want to see what you say and can actually do. You claim you can go above this level and shit like that. So Vegeta wakes up. He's at Capsule Corp. He runs over there and he's like, what's going on? Then Goku's like, guess what? We could get stronger. We got to go into the hyperbolic time chamber. Goku and Gohan go in first. Cell's on the loose. Piccolo pulls up on him, merged with Kami and everything else. Same shit happens. He lets Cell get away. Cell's, eating all these lives up. Then Piccolo fights against Android 17. They're neck and neck, but then when Cell reappears, he's too powerful. He can't fight him. Goku gets there too late, but then he's like fighting against Cell, and he's actually, stronger than him. But in this, he's like worried about Krillin and shit. He's like, damn, Krillin has to use that button. And he's like worried about that kind of shit. And he's like, yo, Krillin, you gotta kill Android 18, because if you do that and I get rid of him, the world's safe. And he's like, I don't want to do that. This girl didn't ask for this. And he's like, God damn it, no. And then, he uses solar flare and makes a beeline towards 18. Gohan gets dismissed. Even though he's the Super Saiyan, he gets dismissed. And then, he absorbs 18. He fights against Goku. Goku loses, and he's like, son, just stand down. We can't win this fight. Please don't destroy our planet. And he's like, I'll give you guys 10 days. And next time, you don't get this chance. This is your chance right here to get stronger in the next 10 days and then come challenge me in the Cell games. Then, Vegeta and them emerge. Vegeta doesn't have Super Saiyan 2 either, nor does Trunks. But, Gohan is still being talked about as that guy and shit. Because Trunks remembers him as his trainer, and he remembers how powerful he was and everything else too. And then everybody's still like, but he's still. And then Goku's like, yeah, my son is probably some guy. Vegeta fights against Cell first, and he's doing all right. But then Cell actually turns it on, and he's like, oh shit, I can't beat this guy. Cell kills Trunks, and then it becomes a battle royale kind of thing. And Goku steps in because Vegeta gets knocked out. And he's fighting, and then one thing leads to another, and then Gohan steps in because Goku's about to get knocked the fuck out, and then Gohan steps in and he's Super Saiyan 2. He's fighting, all that shit happens the same way after that. But Trunks is already dead, and Vegeta's like out. He's dazed and shit. He wakes up and he sees Gohan fighting against Cell, and he's like, damn, I have to help out. He tries to, but then Gohan is the one who actually defeats Cell. That shit stays the same. Trunks is wished back to life. He goes back to his timeline. Vegeta then trains in the hyperbolic time chamber and at the Capsule Corporation, and he achieves Super Saiyan 3. Goku was about to achieve Super Saiyan 3, but then he came back down for the martial arts tournament. Because Vegeta's like, I'm the strongest Saiyan now. I'm the most powerful. Go on, you might have saved the world, all those years ago, but boy, you're not seeing me in a fight. And he's like, oh yeah? All right. And Gohan's like, okay, I'm kind of over school, but I can, see what this is about. And then, my dad's back in town too. So then they all got there and they did that. One thing led to another, and Supreme Kai understands that Gohan's the most powerful Saiyan, and he's like, I need you, because, we need to prevent Buu from, and then they came in and stole his energy, the people with them, Bofovich and the other guy, and they got away. After that happened, they proceed to, Babidi's chamber. They fight against enemies and it's quick. But then Goku starts to get hard on himself. He's like, damn, had I been here, maybe this would have been prevented. I'm usually the one who should, try to save this planet. This is my home. I shouldn't let this be on my sons and everybody else. I should have done more. And then Vegeta's like, yeah, you should have done more, And he's kind of upset about Goku and his son too. But he's like, Goku's more hard on himself. He was looking at Vegeta, but Vegeta was hiding his shit, right? And he was telling Goku, well, I'm better than you, I'm better than you. And Goku's like, in the back of his mind is like, is he really better than me? Because I've been training too. And all this leads to him becoming the one marked. Now, Goku doesn't do the shit that Vegeta does, right? Goku's locked in on Vegeta. He's locked in on Vegeta, and he's like, okay, you think you're more powerful than me, then prove it. Let's go fight. And then, King Kai Supreme Kai tries to stop him, and he's like, no. And then they go. And Vegeta and Goku fight, and Vegeta's the one, suppressed now, and he's fighting against Goku. And then mid-fight, he goes Super Saiyan 3, and then he's like, what? Surprises Goku. He's like, we gotta stop this shit now, You have to knock your ass out. And he's like, no, let's just go over there. And then, the way the Saiyans are, they don't like to team up and fight, especially right now. Goku has the M on his head, so he's like, nah, I want to beat this enemy myself. Fuck Vegeta. He knocks Vegeta out. He's like, then he goes to fight Majin Buu after Gohan and the Spring Kai are defeated. He runs, that fade with Kid or Fat Buu, and he loses. Vegeta is hunting down, Fat Boo. Fat Boo becomes Super Boo, and he's hunting down the Super Boo, and he's trying to fight against him, and he's like neck and neck with him. He's using Super Saiyan 3. This gave them time to train in the hyperbolic time chamber, but he still gets away from Vegeta, and he goes up to the lookout and kills more people. But Gotenks is waiting for him up there. Gotenks, he's like, another Super Saiyan 3, and he's like, yep, you guess it. And then they're fighting, and one thing leads to another. Gohan comes back. Then all the Saiyans are here, and it's like, they could team up and fight against these people, but Vegeta's kind of, Saiyan and shit, and he's like, I'll let these youngsters, fight, you know. But the minute they, are defeated, or it looks like they're about to be defeated, I'll step in. And then, Gohan's like, thanks, Vegeta. I can prove why I'm the, best. And he's trying to, show out. One thing leads to another. They get absorbed, and then he's like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. Goku gets there in time, and they fuse. Vegito comes. Vegito is putting Beltaz on, Buhan, and then all that shit happens still. Kid Buu, emerges, and then after that happens, they fight on King Kai's planet, or Supreme Kai's planet. Vegeta fights against Buu, and then, he tries to get help from, Goku. Goku tries to help, but he's like, damn, I can't help, but I have the idea to do the Spirit Bomb. And then Vegeta's like, you better do that shit, because I'm fighting him all out right now. And then Vegeta can't sustain Super Saiyan 3, so he's fighting him in Super Saiyan 2. And, it's still a tough fight. But Goku's able to get enough energy because Mr. Satan talks to the people of Earth and then everywhere else. Goku heaves that Spirit Bomb, Super Spirit Bomb at him. But, Kid Buu starts to throw it back, and then he's like, get down, Kakarot. I'm going to hit him with the Final Flash. And the Final Flash pushes the Super Spirit Bomb, boom! And he gets, Kid Buu the fuck out of there. And then that's how they win. So Vegeta and Goku help save the universe that time. Then Beerus arrives. Beerus arrives. Goku actually trained with, King Kai, and he attained Super Saiyan 3. But then he got one-tapped by Beerus. And then Vegeta saw his wife get slapped, and then he went into Super Saiyan 3 and fought against Beerus. They decided all collectively to give it to Vegeta since he's the Prince of all Saiyans. He fights against Beerus, and then he's like, you Saiyans are interesting. I don't want to destroy you yet. He says it just like that. These confectionaries are pretty all right. So then Frieza comes back to life. Goku fights against, Frieza first. And then Vegeta's like, damn, he's going to lose. And Goku and Vegeta have, Super Saiyan Blue. And they're fighting, and then, Goku does get shot down by the little guy, because he powers down and plays games a little bit. And then Vegeta's, fighting against Frieza, and he beats Frieza. I know. Next thing happens, the Universe 6 happens. Goku and Vegeta basically switch spots. So Goku runs the gauntlet against those three guys. He actually fights against Kaba. He's like, I'll teach you Super Saiyan, but then, once this fight gets going, I'm going to have to, actually put, belt ass on you and, actually beat you. Kaba's like, I won't. And then he just gets, defeated, right, by Goku. Goku fights on. But then, Hit comes in and defeats Goku. Vegeta is the one who, he achieves blue evolution right then and there, and he's, fighting him, and, Hit still wins, but then, the other guy comes in and is like, okay, I'll act like I lose and shit. And then they won the Super Dragon Ball. Zamasu comes through. When Zamasu comes through, he took Vegeta's body, and then it's even more. And he's like, Father, why would you kill Mother like that? And he's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about, son. And he's like, but you did it. And he's like, Goku's like, no, your father would never kill your mother. He's had a past and shit, but it's not like that, son. And then he's like, we gotta go back and save my mom and shit. And, they deal with the current day Zamasu, Beerus, erases him, and then they go, the two Zamasus, they fuse together, and then Vegito comes, and he's putting belt to ass on this, Zamasu, but then, it's immortal. So it's like, how the fuck do I, like, I need to seal this guy away, but then it's like, they unfuse. Then, Goku's like, I'll call Zeno, and he calls Zeno. Zeno comes through and erases him. After that, we get to the Tournament of Power. Tournament of Power plays out the same way, except Goku fights against Top, the Destroyer. And Goku uses Kaioken Blue against Top, the Destroyer, gets rid of him. Then he tries to fight against Beerus, and he powers down. And then, Vegeta and Frieza are left in the ring, and he's like, I can't believe that this guy's still alive. But, Android 17's still there, too. And he's, like, fighting against, Jiren, and he goes into not Ultra Instinct, but Ultra Ego, right then and there in that tournament. So he's, like, actually, putting belt to ass on Jiren a little bit. And Jiren's pissed. He's like, a monkey like you? I can't believe it. And he's like, what do you know about those monkeys? Says Frieza. He's like, I have to fight them all the time. They team up and knock Jiren out of the ring. Because he powers out of Ultra Ego and he goes into Super Saiyan. And they do the same shit that Goku and Frieza did. And they get Jiren out of the ring. After this happens, Android 17 wins the universe tournament. And they go back to Earth. Then Broly shows up. And they're like, hey, man, this guy's doing other shit. You want to fight him, Kakarot? That's cool. You fight against him, and then Vegeta's watching. He's like, okay, shit, maybe I should help you out. And then once he sees Goku go to, like, Super Saiyan Blue and he's still struggling, he's like, okay, yeah, let me help you out. And Frieza kind of fucked us because he killed his father. And, even though his father wasn't the best guy in the world, he still cared about his daddy and shit. So now we have to fight this guy, and I want to recruit him into our fucking ranks, so we got to beat this guy, guys, real quick. Into the Saiyan culture again. They fuse into Gogeta and they handle Broly. Vegeta goes there in through spaceship, but then like he's going there with Bulma and he flashes over there and he's like, hey, guess what? You're Saiyan and you're gonna do what I say. You are one of my guys. Do you understand what that means, bro? You're one of my fucking guys. You're not just any kind of being. You're a Saiyan. You gotta take pride in that shit, son. You're coming back with me. But if you have to stay here on this gas planet, then do it. But when we call you, use this and we'll link up. We'll train and shit. Call me the Prince of all Saiyans. Call me your king. And that's how that ends. All right. I know it's like a lot of shit changed, but Vegeta needed his glory for like 30 minutes almost is how long I've been on this video for. And that's the alternate storyline of Vegeta being the MC of Dragon Ball. I couldn't tell it any other way. That's how it should be. And Vegeta may fight Frieza, in the original, timeline, or may not, but, that's what I'm hoping for. But this was an alternate storyline of Vegeta being the MC, by the Green Angel. So be cool, call in the corner, and let me know what you think about this story in the comments.